With one compelling scene, Reacher Season 3's Episode 6 seems to have foreshadowed how a lovable character's story will eventually end. Like its predecessors, Reacher Season 3 introduces audiences to a diverse set of characters. While some of them, like Xavier Quinn, are purely antagonistic with no scope of redemption, others, like Villanueva, are morally sound and balance the good versus evil scales in the series. Similarly, Paulie's involvement in Reacher Season 3 raises the stakes in the overarching story because he is far stronger and more merciless than the titular hero. Meanwhile, Susan Duffy serves as Jack Reacher's new romantic interest in Reacher Season 3 and, like Villanueva, adds a layer of heart and optimism to an otherwise dark narrative. With so many compelling players involved in the season story, it would be unfair to call one character the sole standout. However, one character is arguably more lovable than all the others. A closer look at one scene from Reacher Season 3's Episode 6 seems to have given away how his story will conclude. Reacher Season 3 should end with Richard driving out of the gates Reacher smashed. Richard would be better off living away from his father. Jack Reacher's cover finally gets blown in Reacher Season 3's Episode 6. However, before Quinn and his men can do anything to him, he hops inside a vehicle and drives through the massive gates of Zachary Beck's mansion. In Season 3's Episode 6, Reacher smashing the gates open shows how he, too, understands when he should flee the scene instead of standing his ground and sticking around to fight. At the same time, the gates also seem to foreshadow how Richard Beck will eventually escape his father's mansion. Zachary Beck's son, Richard, has been the punching bag for villains like Quinn, who want to establish control over Beck's gun-running business. He is his father's kryptonite, allowing Quinn to control his father by torturing him. If it wasn't for his father's shady business, Richard could have had a better life. Unfortunately, even though he is not involved in his father's unethical activities in any capacity, Quinn targets him to gain control over his father. Quinn even cut off his ear to make Zachary his puppet. After everything he has been through, it is hard not to foresee how Richard will eventually grow frustrated and drive out of the mansion's broken gates. He has endured enough punishment for his father's actions. In Season 3's Episode 6, he even seems to reach the end of his wits when Quinn forces him to play Russian roulette. Now that he is starting to realize that his father cannot do much to protect him from evil forces like Quinn, Richard might finally take matters into his own hands and break free from a home that is keeping him imprisoned. Reacher smashing the gates symbolizes his impact on Richard's life. It seems to foreshadow Reacher's growing influence on the young man. Jack Reacher, Alan Ritchson, is teaching Richard Beck, Johnny Berchtold, how to box in Reacher Season 3 EP4. Image via Prime Video. Reacher has been more of a father figure for Richard than Zachary. While Zachary Beck remains too invested in his business and rarely checks up on his son, Reacher dedicates time to teaching him self-defense and thrashes his bullies to protect him. The fact that Richard does not tell his father the truth about Reacher's undercover mission even after learning that he is working with the DEA shows that he, too, appreciates having him around. Owing to this, it seems like Reacher's action of breaking the gates serves somewhat as a sign for Richard to follow his lead and free himself from his toxic father. While only time will tell what Richard will do, his relationship with his father will never be the same after Season 3's Episode 6 events. Even if he decides to stick around in his home for a few years, he will likely choose to distance himself from his father because of his inability to protect him from men like Quinn. After meeting the titular Alan Ritchson character in Reacher Season 3, Richard also seems to have understood the value of living free from the shackles of material belongings, which could become another solid reason for him to leave his father's riches behind and live independently.